Welcome into the Wiltfong Whiparound with Steve Wiltfong. Today is Monday, September 15th. I am your host, Josh Newberg, and week 3 is in the books. You guys watched a ton of college football over the weekend. We're going to talk about all the recruiting action coming from some of these games. I'm excited to break it down with national analyst Steve Wiltfong. But before we get going, guys, these are exciting times. We're less than 3 months from signing day, so jump on board, hit subscribe. This is going to be the place to be for all your recruiting news between now and National Signing Day. Also, join Rivals today. Get 1 year full access to The Athletic. Also, all the On3 national and fan site content that goes along with it. I'll tell you what, I'll put the link in the description of this video so you can go click it and sign up to Rivals today. All right, let's bring in Steve Wiltfong, and we are going to start where all the action is. LSU beats UF in a night game in Death Valley, and we are here to break down the impact it had on recruiting, and it's already having in recruiting because, Steve, just moments before taping this, LSU lands its quarterback of the future. Top 10 QB Peyton Houston is in. How is LSU able to beat out Oklahoma and USC?
LSU is the hottest team in the country right now on the recruiting trail, securing a pledge from 4-star quarterback Peyton Houston and hosting several flip targets and other key 2027 recruits over the weekend for the victory over the Gators. Regarding Peyton Houston, it was just constant communication from the start of the calendar year. He emerged as LSU's top target at the position in the 2027 cycle. They got him to campus numerous times. He built a great relationship with Joe Sloan, and that coaching staff loves the quarterback pedigree in Baton Rouge with guys like Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, and now Garrett Nussmeier under center. The offense, the proximity to home. Obviously he strongly considered Oklahoma and USC, but it's a tight-knit family. Being able to play for the home state, nearby family, friends, and all the support he has in the community, I think was a big deal for him. But LSU's track record at the position, what it's like to play in Death Valley at night, where LSU's at as a program, top 5 team in the country, competing for a national championship. That's the goal year in and year out. That's the stage he wants to play on, put on for the home state. LSU was able to hold off Oklahoma, beat USC, and many others for Peyton Houston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was a lot of commitments on campus, but it was also, you hit on it, there were some flip targets on campus as well. And Lamar Brown, the 5-star athlete, committed to LSU. He was doing some recruiting. He was also doing some tweeting, talking about big flips on the way. So who are we talking about when it comes to top flip targets on campus?
Well, Lamar was talking about, and it starts with Big Manny. He's talking about Emmanuel Iheanacho, the 5-star offensive tackle from Baltimore, Maryland. He is committed to Oregon. The Ducks have led for a lot of his process. Are expected to get him out a couple more times this fall, according to our colleague Chad Simmons. But LSU is the program that remains the biggest threat to the Ducks. They were the runner-up the first time around when he made his decision. And LSU will work to get him back to campus. It was an environment that certainly resonated with Iheanacho, getting around LSU's commits again, their players, their coaching staff, reminding him why he loved LSU so much in the first place. They were a program that had some momentum with him at various points in his process. There's not many places that resemble LSU when you go there for a game visit at night. The Tigers will work to get Iheanacho back on campus in the future. KJ Edwards, number 3 running back in the Rivals 300, committed to Texas A&M, but he is the target for LSU at the position, the only running back that they're recruiting. He had a great official visit in the summer, had a fantastic experience over the weekend, and KJ Edwards is a guy that LSU will remain on the gas for as they try to get him back to campus. I talked to a source this morning that thinks that both those recruitments will go to the end. Now, obviously, when you're talking about Iheanacho, you're going to have to make a financial investment to land him. I think Oregon has obviously done a great job recruiting him, from the relationships with the staff to what they've been able to do with the opportunities on and off the field for Iheanacho. LSU knows what kind of recruiting battle this is, and they're going to continue pushing along, and we'll see where the chips fall in December. I think he's going to be tough to flip from Oregon, but we'll see what I'm saying down the road here as these recruitments remain fluid. Same with KJ Edwards. Obviously, some other guys that LSU is going to continue to swing at moving forward. Blaine Bradford committed to Ohio State. That's going to be another tough flip for LSU. But the Tigers, with his older brother playing there, the in-state local proximity, we know that they're going to make a final pitch at some point to flip him from the defending national champs. And J.J. Bush, Rivals 300 linebacker, committed to Arkansas. He's someone that's always been high on LSU. Both Lamar Brown and edge rusher commit Trenton Henderson tell me that they think that LSU has a great shot to flip J.J. Bush. And J.J. Bush himself told me that LSU is very high on his list after the visit. He had a fantastic time in Death Valley. So Trenton Henderson also predicting that Iheanacho will ultimately end up in LSU's class as well. So at the very least, if you're talking to the LSU commits, Oregon's got their hands full with the Tigers for Iheanacho. They're in a great spot for J.J. Bush. KJ Edwards, a source this morning, says that he thinks that one's going to go to the end with Texas A&M. And then Blaine Bradford, not on flip watch right now by any stretch, but someone LSU will try and take another big swing at before ink hits paper and these guys sign in with their future programs.
Yeah, they're going to set up a 5-star flip. I mean, that bag is still there from Tristan Keys. They had the number 1 wide receiver in America committed to them for a reason. He decides to go off to Tennessee. You got to think that same bag is big enough for a guy like an Iheanacho, KJ Edwards, or somebody if they do want to go for a big flip. So let's move on to 2027. We had the commitment of Peyton Houston just about 2 hours ago. Now it's setting up to be a great class for LSU. There were some 2027 guys on campus, but how good can this class be for LSU?
Let's talk game time. All of a sudden, the college and NFL football seasons are upon us. But guess what? We need our tickets, and getting deals on last-minute tickets can be frustrating when all you want to do is be there for the moment your team runs out onto the field. Well, thankfully, the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing ticket experiences, and it only takes a few simple clicks. The app is easy to use, and the Game Time guarantee means that you can trust that you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. That's why I use the Game Time app. It's super simple and makes the experience of buying great seats a breeze. Also, one of the coolest features I've seen is the Game Time lowest price guarantee. It's where Game Time will credit you 100% of the difference to guarantee you're getting the lowest price if you find cheaper tickets elsewhere. All right, here's what we're going to do. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code ON3, ON3. That's the promo code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That ON3 for 20% off. Game Time, last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Well, home cooking always kind of determines how high an LSU class will be ranked. LSU is always going to do a fantastic job in state. It comes down to how high are those guys ranked when you're comparing them to the prospects that are going to sign with the likes of Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas, to name a few. There's some elite players in Louisiana in 2027 that the Tigers are at the top for, or near the top. That starts with 5-star tight end, the number 1 player in the country at his position, Ahmad Hudson. I've had a long-standing Rivals prediction in favor of the Tigers for Ahmad Hudson. Sam Spiegelman feels the same way. Easton Royal, 5-star receiver, was there on Saturday night. He loved the energy, called Saturday night top tier, talked about the Tiger pride, great all-around vibe, the culture, the love from the fans, and then certainly the way LSU has developed wide receivers historically. They're going to have a great shot to land Easton Royal. I love where LSU stands with a pair of 4-star defensive backs, Karan Eugene and Jaden Anding, in my Rivals prediction machine reflects that. And then Javon Vitale Jr. joined Sam Spiegelman on the prediction from the in-state playmaker for him to ultimately land at LSU as well. And that's just the guys that visited over the weekend. Right. We know that LSU's in the middle of it for a lot of the nation's best in and out of state, guys like number 1 ranked defensive lineman Jalen Brewster.
All right, big wins on the field in SEC play can create momentum. So, Tiger fans, talk to Steve and I. If you're taking that Tristan Keys bag and you could flip one of these guys that was on campus, who would it be? Emmanuel Iheanacho, Blaine Bradford, J.J. Bush, or K.J. Edwards? Talk to us. Let us know. Comment section below. All right, Steve, we got to go and talk a little Tennessee recruiting because There's a lot of top recruits in Neyland to watch an instant classic. Well, depending on which side of the fandom you're on, it was an instant classic or it was a heartbreaker. So what was the feedback, though, from recruits that Tennessee hosted?
Oh man, it was one of the best atmospheres you're ever going to find in college football. And the buzz around this Tennessee football program is one that this is a team that's ready to compete for national championships and stay there for a long time. You know, Georgia's obviously the most consistent program in college football. In every season of the Josh Heupel era, the Vols have had the lead on Georgia. This looked like the first time that they were going to knock them off, but they showed these top prospects that they can play with any in the country, and the returns coming out of the weekend are obviously very strong. I think that Tennessee's ultimately going to land 4-star defensive lineman Andrew Rogers as they battle South Carolina for the former Virginia Tech commit. Dre Quinn, Clemson commit on campus, told me he is still committed to Clemson, but that it would be cool to play in the SEC. Maybe that's at Texas. Maybe that's at Tennessee. Maybe that's somewhere else. Georgia and Georgia Tech were also finalists for Dre Quinn, but talking to some folks that spent time with him on his visit, sounds like that went fantastic. And first time we've really seen a recruit that's committed to Clemson take a game day visit elsewhere. So I don't know if this is modern recruiting for Clemson or how that's going to work out, because normally they're uncommitted right away if they show interest in another school.
Yeah,
Tennessee,
I was going to ask you about that because it kind of reminded me about Isaiah Campbell last year as well. You know, Tennessee was able to flip him at the end, and it kind of, his interest in Tennessee ended up moving him off of that commitment to Clemson. But you know, maybe it's just Clemson's record this year. You don't have the same amount of leverage to play that game with recruits as you do when you're winning 10 and 11 games.
Right. And I mean, Clemson, they've been more vulnerable on the recruiting trail than we've seen in the past. Their quarterback flipped at the end last year to Notre Dame, Blake Hebert. That was a big loss for Clemson as they lost one of the top dual threat quarterbacks in the country. But Tennessee, they're showing that they got the recruiting chops to go toe-to-toe with any school in the country. They got the number 8 ranked recruiting class in 2026, headlined by guys like Faison Brandon, who they beat LSU for, the in-state quarterback. He was on the sideline rubbing elbows with Peyton Manning before the game. Tristan Keys, they flipped from LSU, the number 1 receiver in the country. Those are just 2 of the prominent wins. This is the top 10 class. They're looking for more. Iverson Garcia is an in-state defensive tackle that's committed to USF right now, that's been at Tennessee the last 2 weekends. They're going to have a really good shot at him. And they're still looking for a running back, maybe a tight end as they shore things up in 2026. And then in 2027, man, it was a terrific group of recruits. It was the number 1 player in the country was there. Kennedy Brown, offensive tackle from the Lone Star State. He told me before the season, Tennessee was one of the schools he really wanted to go visit. Him and his family had a good time. He got to meet Peyton Manning. They got around offensive line coach Glenn Ellerby. He thought that the offensive line dominated Georgia in that game. So he sees the way that the players play at the point of attack, got to interact with the coaching staff. Mom said there will be another trip. So Tennessee's one of the favorites there. Number 1 linebacker in the country, legacy recruit Cooper Witten. This was the first visit that he scheduled. Oklahoma, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Texas, some of the others in the mix for Cooper Witten. But you got to feel that Tennessee is closer to the top of that list. A couple defensive ends that they are at the top or in first place for. Chris Whitehead, I think they lead for edge rusher from the DMV. Rashad Streets from North Carolina gave the visit high marks. Elijah Hutchinson's a top 5 offensive tackle that had a great visit. In-state recruits like Lawrence Britt, Keyshawn Bowman, those guys raved about Tennessee. So they didn't win the game, but they're going to win a lot of these recruitments, guys that were in Knoxville, and that's going to help them beat Georgia down the road. This is a program that looks like they're ready to compete for a national title this year. I could see them going 8-1 down the stretch. I think that gets them in the playoffs, and then they'll be a tough out for somebody come playoff season.
Yeah, so we'll keep on watching. But overall, I mean, it sounds like despite the loss, it wasn't a bad day for Tennessee. It just could have been a better day with a win.
Well, certainly. Recruiting's a game of inches. You never know how they're going to add up. A win over Georgia, certainly would have resonated another inch or two with these 2027s. But again, the returns were coming in like they did beat Georgia. The Tennessee coaching staff does a good job of building meaningful relationships. And what was funny is there was a little bit of an interaction. I don't know if it was on the Tennessee message board or on my Twitter after the game, where I'm talking about all this great feedback you're getting from Tennessee prospects at the game, and someone says it doesn't matter. These recruits take the biggest bag or whatever. And then another Tennessee fan responded, and I hit the like button because it is very, very true. Well, good thing we got the money to compete on the recruiting trail. The Vols are checking all boxes. Yeah. Programs winning. They're developing players. They're getting guys drafted. They're playing in the biggest games. They're showing they can win them. They're building meaningful relationships. Prospects still want to know who they're going to play for, who's going to develop them. Are they going to get the best out of them? But in modern recruiting, you also got to be able to pay the young man, and the Vols have shown that they can do that and win those recruitments as well.
Yeah, and they won the Nico trade, so there's that, a little consolidation prize there. But we will, we're going to be talking a lot of Tennessee recruiting. Tennessee fans, talk to Steve and I. I mean, kind of mixed emotions after this one, no doubt about it. The game was a heartbreaker, but with the offense clicking, the defense playing hard, you got to think, right? Recruits really saw a great game. I mean, barring that last little couple minutes, it was a great one there in Neyland. So talk to us. How do you feel about Tennessee recruiting moving forward? All right, let's talk Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And the Jackets are buzzing after knocking off Clemson and starting 3-0. Steve, major flip targets on campus for this one, including A&M commit, in-state edge, Bryce Perry Wright. Is Georgia Tech, are they done battling here, or can they keep them in state?
Well, I think they got to keep playing at a high level. Bryce Perry Wright's recruitment was the epitome of a modern recruitment. Texas A&M did a good job of building a great relationship with him, with their two defensive line coaches, Coach Chaos, Coach Tony Gerard-Edey. But certainly, obviously, it was a very competitive recruitment for what you can offer off the field as well. So he's going to get back to Texas A&M for the Auburn game, but he's loving what he's seeing from Georgia Tech, loves the way they play defense, the way they've been consistent in the trajectory of the program. And that's how a lot of these in-state targets feel about Georgia Tech. Brent Key, hard-nosed, old-school kind of coach that gets the best out of his guys, but his players love playing for him. That atmosphere and culture around that team, when recruits come on campus, when they go in the locker room, it really resonates with them. It's a place that's obviously getting the best out of their players, and it's a place where you can stay closer to home and now compete at a high level outside of the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia Tech is instantly one of the favorites in the ACC, and if you win the ACC, Josh, what does that mean?
You are in the playoffs.
You are in the playoffs, and this is a program that's competing for a playoff spot. They have one of the more exciting quarterbacks in the country in Haynes King. Is he a Heisman candidate, in your opinion, Josh?
Not yet, but he's getting there.
Yeah, one of the truly more explosive dual threat quarterbacks in the country. He is very tough, and he kind of takes on the style of play that their head coach wants. Brent Key, an old school offensive line guy that was an assistant coach at Alabama that helped the Tide win national titles. Now he's back at his alma mater. He has created a lot of excitement around this program, and there's no fluff. There's no BS with this Georgia Tech staff. There's no fake graphics, generating all kinds of just excitement around your program with stuff that doesn't really matter. It's going on the field, kicking ass, developing your players, and creating a tough guy atmosphere that true alphas want to be part of. And Georgia, I talked to a Georgia Tech coach over the weekend, and it's like, well, this guy's not that high on someone else's board. Well, he's high on our board, and you see what we get out of our players. This is a guy that we want him to come here, and we're going to get the best out of them. So if they're recruiting you, they believe in you, and they think that they can turn you into a much better player from 18 years old to 22-year-olds. And there's a lot more flip targets that were on campus. There's a lot more flip targets that maybe weren't there, but they're guys that they want to go after. That includes Texas A&M receiver commit Aaron Gregory. Florida State defensive line commit Tico Critidon is a guy that Georgia Tech is heavy on. We've talked about Auburn and South Carolina with him, but Georgia Tech is the biggest the biggest contender in the Flip Watch sweepstakes for him. How about Dorian Barney, a 4-star cornerback committed to Michigan right now, chose Michigan over Penn State in the Aggies. That recruitment's been very fluid. Alabama one time had his commitment, but Georgia Tech still wore him there. Nebraska receiver commit Nayland Scott, Kentucky offensive tackle commit Tyreek Jemison. There were more committed guys on campus than just the ones that we've talked about in this video. So Georgia Tech, if they can keep it rolling, they got to get through. The ACC is exciting, but if they can get to the ACC title game, let's see what they're able to do in a modern recruiting way with some of these guys. Because look, it's not like they're recruiting against other programs that can't develop players as well. But Georgia Tech, they're now showing they can win. And people are always like, oh, that's a bad game, this, bad game, that. Look, you got to get into the conversation before you can even talk about bag by winning, player development, good relationships. Georgia Tech doing that right now. And so it'll be exciting to see what happens. And then so much 2027 reaction, Josh. We can't go through it all, but the number one safety in the country, Cameron Dorsey, Georgia Tech was first to offer. They're doing a good job of getting in early on their top 2027 targets. And that is one where they are in really good shape there as they battle powerhouse programs from coast to coast. And they had one of their top quarterbacks in the 2027 class on campus, Cooper Newman, who is a very accurate passer for Sevier County there in the Smoky Mountains. He's been to Georgia Tech a few times now. I think they're one of the front runners, if not the favorite, but he completes it at a high clip, sees the field well. He's a tough, hard-nosed player that certainly fits what Georgia Tech's looking for at the position. So Cooper Newman had a great visit over the weekend. So did so many others. But it's just fun to talk about a new team that's prominent in college football right now. Brent Key and the Yellow Jackets are certainly that.
Yeah, and to answer your question about the Heisman, I think Hayes King is right there. And there's kind of a couple quarterbacks. I think Diego Pavia, Tommy Castellanos, kind of all cut from that same cloth. Like, they might not make it to the NFL, but they are a problem if you got to deal with them at the college level because they just play hard, Steve. They love ball, and they know how to make plays.
This is a Georgia Tech team that took Georgia to the brink. My kid's still – Dad, do you remember that 8 overtime game? Like, Georgia Tech is relevant in my house because of that game. And I'm sure that was a loss that when they walked in the locker room, Georgia Tech wasn't feeling any kind of, what's it called? Like fake wins. What's the word for that? Like
a cheap win.
Well, they didn't feel like they lost that game and they were pissed about it. They didn't walk in there thinking, oh, we showed something. You know, that was just another stepping stone game for this program. It wasn't like, oh, we're so close. It was, damn, we let one get away. And so they're not letting games get away. I had a great feeling they were going to beat Clemson. Now, Clemson's always going to be a hard out because of their culture. They're going to play you hard for 4 quarters. And so they did just that on the road at Georgia Tech. But it was the young man making a 55-yard field goal with no time on the clock. Couldn't see the field 2 minutes later with all the fans on the field. It was a special victory. Now let's see how they respond to some success. They've been building this program up for a couple years. Yeah. Now, how do you respond to some success? We learn a lot about football teams in that regard, but just I have a feeling that they're going to play well moving forward just because of the backbone of the program and the way Brent Key and company have put things in place.
All right, let's head down to Columbia, South Carolina, where the Gamecocks, they had several coveted flip targets on campus for this Vandy game, but they happened to lay an egg on the field. Did it hurt them with any of the guys like a Julian Walker who's committed to Michigan?
No, obviously when you lose Lenoris Sellers, it's going to be tough to beat a good Vanderbilt football team. I think the one thing that resonated with me talking to some of the top recruits on campus is just that these coaches did a good job of compartmentalizing the loss, but still recognizing, hey, we got guys on campus that can help us win these games in the future, and made those guys feel at home after the game. Some of them stayed on campus into Sunday, but Julian Walker, specifically 2026 recruit, committed to Michigan right now. You know, he's very comfortable at South Carolina, and he talked about getting around a lot of the other recruits, guys committed to South Carolina. He's like, I've known these dudes for 2 years now. So he's very comfortable with players that he could potentially be playing at South Carolina for. Shane Beamer and his mom were able to hang out together. His mom's a big piece to the puzzle. He was around Sterling Lucas again. So really good visit. Now he's going to Michigan next month for the Wisconsin game. His mom has not been to Ann Arbor. Now Sharon Moore and company have done a really good job of connecting with her over FaceTime and over the phone and including her. But it's going to be a big visit to get mom up to Ann Arbor and see how comfortable she is there with the maize and blue. Michigan, they know they're going to have to battle till the end with Julian Walker. Julian Walker, a big riser in our updated Rivals 300 today. He is now in the top 100. He's got some exciting traits as a pass rusher. His dad is the strength coach at South Carolina. The Gamecocks are definitely trending up. Big visit coming up from Michigan, Wisconsin. Might be an even bigger visit for mom. Julian thinks both programs can get the best out of him from a development standpoint. So we'll see what Michigan can show him on his return visit. He obviously had a great official visit to Ann Arbor during the summer because he committed shortly after, which was kind of a shocker. You know, most people assumed he would end up at South Carolina because of his dad, proximity, trajectory of the program, how South Carolina treats their players on and off the field. But Michigan was able to get them in the fold. Now they got a battle to keep them.
What other buzz you got coming out of Columbia on this big recruiting weekend?
Well, obviously, one of the class jewels, Landon Duckworth, returned to Williams-Brice Stadium. LSU got him the campus 2 weeks ago. Sounds like he is locked in with the Gamecocks. There was never any kind of worry around Shane Beamer and his coaching staff with Landon Duckworth visiting LSU. They had some really good 2027s and 2028s there. That enjoyed their time on campus. Anthony Sweeney's the number 4 ranked edge rusher in the country out of Good Counsel in Olney, Maryland. He's the number 18 player overall. He stayed into Sunday and loves the coaching staff and culture, says it's a place with genuine people who care for you that can get you to the next level. Jaden Bryant from Irmo, South Carolina, he actually said, you know, he was like, I'm kind of glad I got to see a loss and how they handled it as a program. They still showed love, win or lose. Now, he doesn't want them to lose very often. South Carolina is the Rivals prediction machine favorite for Jaden Bryant. For edge rusher KJ Green, another top 100 player. They had Rivals number 3, 2028 running back Kevin Hartsfield on campus, who just enjoyed the scene, the light show, the crowd, the environment, the energy. So South Carolina, they're a program that as they rise as a football team under Coach Beamer and company, that the college football playoffs, the goal for them this year, it's also resonating with recruits.
All right, let's move on. And we're talking Nebraska recruiting because the undefeated Huskers already have the number 3 ranked class in the 2027 cycle. And they're building momentum. Already 2 top 100 prospects committed. Steve, what's the latest on Nebraska recruiting after another big visit weekend in Lincoln?
Well, over the weekend, they landed legacy recruit in-state offensive lineman Matt Erickson. He is a top 5 player in the state. And Nebraska has a top 3 recruiting class in the country right now in 2027. They have 3 commits. Erickson joins top 100 safety Torrey Pittman, top 100 quarterback Trey Taylor. And there is a buzz about the Huskers on the trail, undefeated, going into their game Saturday afternoon against Michigan. It should be another strong recruiting weekend in Lincoln for the Huskers. But Erickson was another big pickup for Nebraska at the point of attack, someone that is completely bought into Coach Rule, the style of play, and where the Huskers are headed. Valor Christian offensive lineman Reese Russell is another highly recruited player at the point of attack that visited Nebraska this past Saturday to watch them get a win. And he really likes their where the program's at and said that they're 100% in his recruitment. This coming weekend, there's going to be a lot of talented guys on campus. That's going to include number 4 receiver Matthew Gregory. He's going to visit this weekend. Penn State's been the perceived favorite for much of his process, but the Huskers are someone that's in it. And we see the way Nebraska is recruiting in 2027, some of the guys they're in on. The number 1 player in the country, Kennedy Brown. Number 1 tight end in America, Ahmad Hudson. One of the most coveted interior offensive linemen in the land, Albert Simeon. Nebraska's recruiting nationally right now. They're resonating with top targets. They do a great job of building real relationships. I think they have the resources to compete from an NIL standpoint for these coveted guys. So now that they're playing better on the field, Nebraska looks like a team that could very much land a top 10 class in the 2027 cycle if they can keep it rolling in October and November under the lights on Saturdays.
Let's head down to Miami and talk some Hurricane recruiting because the Canes dominated another in-state team on Saturday. It was USF. Before that, it was Bethune-Cookman. This week, the Canes are going to take on the Florida Gators, and then in a week or two, they're going to play Florida State. So we're going to find out who the real king of Florida is, and Miami's looking great. They had an important target on campus, a quarterback. In 2027 now, 5 of the top 10 quarterbacks in America are already off the board. Who are the Canes zeroing in on?
Alabaster Thompson, 4-star quarterback Trent Seaborn, was one of the headliners at Miami this weekend for the victory over USF in a top 25 showdown inside Hard Rock Stadium. It was a game where the Hurricanes took control early and blew out the Bulls and continue to show recruits, in Trent Seaborn's words, that Miami is absolutely a contender for the national championship. And what the recruits were telling him is, they're just getting started, man. They have so many true freshmen involved in the 2 deep, guys that are waiting in the wings for players that are headed to the NFL. Trent Seaborn told me to be part of what they're building there in Miami is really exciting. South Carolina, Oregon, Alabama, some of the other front runners for Trent Seaborn, but it is obvious that Miami is one of the favorites. Coach Dawson's offense is quarterback friendly. They move the ball. Seeing Cam Ward last year and now Carson Beck this year, he thinks his skill set really lines up for what Coach Dawson is doing on offense. And so Miami is a program that you have to take serious for Trent Seaborn moving forward.
All right. We know that the local talent is going to be on hand when the Florida Gators come to town. But, Steve, you also talked to some that were on campus from this USF game. What are they saying?
Well, in the 2026 class, Miami, Mario Cristobal, those guys love finding these diamonds in the rough from in-state, these tough, hard-nosed kids that we saw Miami compete for national championships for so often early on in our college football fandom, Josh. But we see Miami kind of getting back to that under Cristobal and company.
Yeah.
He's obviously, it's his alma mater, and they love to recruit the elite blue chippers like Jackson Cantwell, but they also want to find hard-nosed, tough, traitsy guys from South Florida that love the Hurricanes and want to put on for their city and have that pride for Miami that you just don't get if you don't grow up in the area. Frederick Saintius from Naples, Florida, St. John Newman, in-state recruit, was committed to FAU. Miami's already had him on campus a couple times this year. I like the way that's trending. The fans made him feel at home. The way the coaching staff talks to him, he feels like a priority and feels like it's a place where they'll get the best out of him. They had a ton of 2027s and 2028s on campus that they're in a great spot for. And so I think as Miami continues to play at a high level, it's going to get harder and harder to come into South Florida. I don't care about what modern recruiting is and this and that. Miami can compete on all fronts for touted guys. And I think if they continue to win at a high level, we're going to see less and less of guys that Miami is recruiting from local go away, because I think even the pride that these kids are going to have in Miami, they might even be able to get a little bit of a hometown discount. They just haven't been winning. You got to develop players to get them to go to the NFL. You got to play in the biggest games in college football. And Mario and Cristobal and company beating Notre Dame in the opener, having a chance to win the ACC this year and beyond, they're showing recruits that everything they want to achieve is back here again at the U. And so recruits that visited for Notre Dame, Bethune-Cookman, and now USF are gushing about where this program is at trajectory-wise. And we know from a relationship standpoint, if Mario Cristobal loves you, you know that, and he's leading the charge in your recruitment. Miami's going to be tough to beat for a lot of these guys down the road.
Yeah, and it's not going to get any easier for Miami's foes if they're able to knock off UF this weekend. Mario Cristobal really likes to make a statement in state, and you can do that by beating your rivals, and the Gators come to town. Steve, we don't got to get into names right now, but is Miami looking to load the sidelines with top recruits on Saturday?
I'm expecting another big visit weekend for Miami for the Florida game. We'll see who shows and who doesn't. You know, Jackson Cantwell will be back in Coral Gables per our colleague Greg Smith. So a lot of the commits will be back on campus. They'll have top targets. They'll have flip targets. It'll be one of the bigger recruiting weekends on in college football this coming weekend.
All right. Well, we'll talk about that visit list on Thursday on the Wiltfong Whiparound, and we will absolutely be covering the fallout from that UF Miami Hurricane matchup. All right. We got a ranking update here at Rivals. The Rivals 300 was updated on Monday morning, and five-star offensive tackle Jackson Cantwell remains atop the list. Also, five-star quarterback Jared Curtis. He moves up 2 spots nationally back into that number 1 spot at the quarterback position. Now, those 2 are locked into their commitments, Miami and Georgia respectively, but Steve, not all 5-stars are created equal, and there's a few that could flip between now and signing day. And the crazy thing is, Steve, we are less than 3 months from signing day. So that being said, who are you putting on Flip Watch this fall?
And it's, again, prospects we're monitoring, right? Manny Iannaccio,
Steve,
5-star.
Statistically speaking, there's going to be flips between now and signing day. I mean, it's just going to happen. We see it every year for various reasons, and not even every reason makes sense, but it's going to happen.
Absolutely. And we've obviously already seen 5-star flips in this cycle when you're talking about guys like Tristan Keys flipping his commitment from LSU to Tennessee. And so certainly, I agree. Richard Wesley was committed to Oregon at one point. Now he's locked in with Texas, but who am I keeping an eye on in our updated rankings? I mean, I think the first guy that you kind of mentioned is 5-star offensive tackle Manny Iannaccio from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm not saying, look, Oregon's going to be tough to beat for Iannaccio. This is one where you're going to have to play well at a high level throughout the whole season, and then also have all the things that you need in a modern recruitment to win a 5-star recruitment like this one. But he was at LSU this past weekend. Maybe he gets back down to Death Valley. He's going to be at Penn State for the whiteout against Oregon. Going to visit Oregon a couple more times per our colleague Chad Simmons. So he's someone to keep an eye on. Miami, if they get on the gas with James Johnson, I think he's going to be tough to flip from Texas. I think the Longhorns are doing all the things necessary to keep him in the fold. He was back in Austin 2 weekends ago. But what is Miami? What if the senior tape is profound? What do they do for the disruptive player at the point of attack? So we'll see what happens with those guys moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, just all across the country, we're seeing guys take visits. Anthony Tank Jones was at Miami. Like you said, James Johnson, he's popped up at a couple places, but back at Texas most recently. So how important are these in-season visits for some of these 5-star committed targets?
Well, sometimes guys just get paid to take visits and they're not serious at all. You know, that's part of the deal, right?
How can you tell when a guy's serious and when he's not, just from a reporting standpoint?
Right. So I don't think the recruiting reporting has not gotten to the point where we say this kid got $10K to take a visit, but he's not interested. But how can you turn down $10K? You know, but that happens. And so if you are the school where the kid is committed to, and Josh Newberg calls and says, look, this other school is offering me $10,000 to just walk on their campus, even though they get a bite at the apple after that. And you can't tell some of these young men and their families they can't just go get $10,000. Right. You know? And so those are things that are happening on the recruiting trail as well. So that's why you'll still see some in-season visits, and maybe those guys are not on commit watch, but I mean, certainly, or flip watch, but certainly it happens. I think if you can tell by our reporting, if we are saying that school is a program to watch moving forward, we think it's genuine. And one that's obviously genuine is Julian Walker, moved into our top 100, committed to Michigan, but has been to South Carolina the last 2 weekends. He's excited to get his mom up to Ann Arbor for the Wisconsin game next month. His mom was with him on the visit this past weekend, spent a lot of time with Coach Beamer. His dad is on the strength staff at South Carolina. The Gamecocks are rising with Julian Walker. Michigan knows they're going to have to battle to the end to keep him. You know, you got a school like Georgia Tech, they're 3-0. You don't even get into modern recruiting conversations without a good product. Can you win? Can you develop? Do you have good relationships? Those are still important. Now, there's another element into these recruitments now, and you got to be able to, you can't bring a knife to a gunfight, but you're not even in the fight if you don't have things that are still important, which is player development, winning games, and good relationships. And Georgia Tech, they're playing at a high level right now. They want to come back around on some of the top players in the state. Guys like Bryce Perry Wright and Aaron Gregory committed to Texas A&M. Tico Critidon committed to Florida State. Can they make a move if they continue to win? We'll see what happens there. UCLA, they fired their coach this weekend, Deshaun Foster. Guys like Johnny Jones reopened their recruitment. Florida State was already in the mix there.
Yeah.
Now he's not committed to the Bruins. And it seemed like the Bruins were invested in some guys in this recruiting cycle. Texas is swinging at Jalen Waters. I think around Austin, they think they can make a move. He's committed to Miami. He's been committed to, I think he was committed to all 3 in-state schools. So his recruitment's been fluid. Guy like Florida running back commit Carson Baker, Auburn, Florida State, South Carolina, still shooting their shot. I think Texas is going to be tough to beat for running back commit Derek Cooper. But where does Miami try and take that at the end of the cycle? So Derek Cooper taking his official visit to Texas this weekend.
All right. Well, there's a lot of moving parts. You guys help us out. You're the real recruiting experts. Who do you have on Flip Watch? I want to know the names. Put it in the comment section below.